The quiet conference room fell silent as Mark Wilson finished speaking. His boss, Catherine, sat motionless across the table, a single tear sliding down her cheek. What had begun as a casual conversation about his personal life had revealed a truth so raw and powerful that it changed how she saw not just Mark, but the very nature of love and sacrifice. If you've ever wondered about the hidden struggles behind a single parent's smile, this story might just change your perspective forever. Stay with me until the end, I promise it's worth every minute. If this story touches your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that reveal the extraordinary courage in ordinary lives. Mark arrived at Horizon Technologies precisely at 7:30 a.m. every weekday, a full hour before most employees. The early mornings were his sanctuary, the only quiet moments in a life that moved at a relentless pace. At 36, he was the company's most dedicated project manager, known for his meticulous attention to detail and unwavering reliability. What most colleagues didn't know was that his punctuality wasn't merely professional dedication, it was necessity. The autumn morning that changed everything began like any other. Mark had dropped 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Liam at before-school care at 7:15, rushing to make his self-imposed deadline. His worn leather messenger bag contained not only work documents but also Emma's science project materials and Liam's soccer uniform, all neatly organized for the evening ahead. The dashboard of his sedan displayed a color-coded calendar of appointments, work deadlines in blue, school events in green, medical appointments in red. Catherine Reynolds, Horizon's newly appointed Director of Operations, had noticed Mark's exceptional work since her arrival 3 months ago. She'd also noticed the shadows under his eyes, the way he declined team happy hours with the same apologetic smile, how he kept his family photos facing inward on his desk rather than displayed proudly like others. When she scheduled their quarterly performance review that morning, she deliberately made it the day's first appointment. "Your work continues to exceed expectations, Mark," Catherine said, reviewing his impressive metrics. At 42, she commanded respect with her direct approach and genuine interest in her team. "The Westlake project launched 2 weeks ahead of schedule under your management." Mark nodded, already mentally calculating whether this meeting would end in time for him to review the Henderson proposal before his 9:30 call. "Thank you. The team worked hard on that one." Catherine set her tablet aside. "I've been here long enough to recognize that you're probably the backbone of this department. What I can't figure out is why someone with your talent isn't pushing for the senior director position that's opening next quarter." The question caught Mark off guard. He deliberately avoided office politics and career advancement conversations for years. "I appreciate the vote of confidence, but my current role works well for my situation." "Your situation," Catherine repeated thoughtfully. "Mark, may I speak candidly? I've noticed you keep strict hours. You're the first to arrive, you never take lunch outside the building, and you leave precisely at 4:30 every day. You haven't attended a single optional company event since I started. Is there something about the culture here that's not working for you?" Mark shifted in his seat. These were the conversations he dreaded, the ones that required explaining his life, justifying his choices. "Nothing like that. The culture is fine. I just have commitments outside of work." Catherine's expression softened. "Family commitments, I'm guessing? I noticed the children in the photos on your desk. They look about my nephew's age." Something about her genuine interest cracked Mark's carefully maintained professional veneer. "Emma is 8, and Liam just turned 6 last month. They're beautiful children," Catherine said. "Your wife must be proud of the family you've built." The familiar pain flashed across Mark's face before he could mask it. 3 years had passed, yet certain comments still felt like pressing on a bruise. "I'm not married. I'm raising them on my own." Catherine's expression registered surprise, then immediate understanding. "I apologize for assuming. That can't be easy, especially with the demands of this job." Mark offered the practiced smile he used whenever this topic arose. "We manage. The kids are great. Very resilient. Most people accepted this polite deflection, changing the subject to spare everyone the discomfort of deeper truths. Catherine, however, tilted her head and studied him with genuine curiosity. "You know, I've noticed something about you, Mark. You're exceptionally good at redirecting personal conversations. I must have asked a dozen indirect questions about your life since I started, and somehow we always end up discussing project timelines instead." Mark felt unexpectedly seen. Most people didn't notice his conversational defense mechanisms. Occupational hazard of project management. Always steering discussions back to the critical path. Catherine laughed, a warm sound that momentarily lightened the atmosphere. "Fair enough. But I'm asking directly now, not as your boss but as someone who values what you contribute here. We have an excellent benefits package for working parents, including flexible scheduling. If there are accommodations that would make your life easier, I'd like to know." "I appreciate that," Mark said, genuinely touched by her concern. "But I've worked out a system that functions for us. Predictability is important for the kids." Catherine nodded, then asked the question that would ultimately change everything. "You know, you're intelligent, dedicated, and from what I can tell, a wonderful father. Why won't you date?" It's been 3 years since. She stopped herself, realizing she might be overstepping. "I'm sorry. That's far too personal. Please forget I asked." Mark should have accepted the retraction. He should have steered the conversation back to quarterly objectives or team restructuring. Instead, something about Catherine's genuine concern broke through years of deflection. Perhaps it was the exhaustion of maintaining his carefully constructed walls, or maybe it was simply time to speak his truth aloud. "Her name was Sarah," he said quietly, surprising himself. "We met in college. She was studying marine biology, I was in business administration. Complete opposites in almost every way, but something just clicked between us." His gaze drifted to the window, seeing not the corporate park outside but memories of a different life. She was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer when Emma was 5 and Liam was 3. 14 months from diagnosis to, he couldn't finish the sentence. Catherine's eyes filled with compassion. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I had no idea." "It's not something I discuss at work," he said. "The last few months, Sarah made me promise something. She made me swear I wouldn't let her illness steal the children's childhood. That no matter what happened, they would still feel secure, loved, and would have as normal a life as possible." The room felt suddenly still, as if the air itself was listening to his story. "After she died, I discovered what that promise really meant. It meant becoming 2 parents in one. It meant learning to braid Emma's hair for school pictures because she wanted it just like Mommy used to do. It meant checking for monsters under the bed and explaining why stars shine and creating new traditions when the old ones hurt too much to continue." Catherine remained silent, understanding that Mark needed to speak these truths that had been bottled up for too long. "Dating?" Mark shook his head. "I barely have time to breathe. My alarm goes off at 5 a.m. so I can prepare lunches, review homework, and get myself ready before waking the kids at 6. After work, there's dinner to make, homework to help with, baths, bedtime stories, and then maybe an hour to clean the house and prepare for the next day before I collapse. Weekends are filled with soccer games, birthday parties, grocery shopping, and the mountain of laundry that never seems to disappear." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "But it's not just the logistics. It's..." He struggled to articulate the deeper truth. "It's that they've already lost so much," Catherine finished softly. Mark looked at her with surprise. "Yes. Exactly. Every minute I'm not at work belongs to them. Every ounce of emotional energy I have goes to making sure they feel secure, to answering their questions about their mother, to helping them process grief that children shouldn't have to understand. What kind of father would I be if I took those precious hours and gave them to someone else?" Catherine's eyes glistened. "You're an extraordinary father, Mark. "I'm just doing what any parent would do," he said. "But there's something else, something I've never admitted to anyone." He took a deep breath. "I'm terrified of letting someone new into our lives, only to have that person decide that our baggage is too heavy. The thought of Emma and Liam experiencing another loss, another person walking away from them. I can't risk it. They deserve stability, not uncertainty." Catherine wiped away a tear that had escaped despite her professional composure. Children are remarkably resilient, especially when they have a parent who loves them as much as you obviously love Emma and Liam. Mark nodded. "They are resilient. Too resilient. Sometimes I look at them and I'm amazed by their capacity for joy despite everything. Emma still talks about her mother every day, little things, like how they used to count stars together or how Sarah always sang off-key in the car. Liam remembers less, which breaks my heart in a different way. He asks questions about her constantly, trying to piece together memories that are already fading." The conversation paused as both processed the weight of Mark's words. Outside the conference room window, the office was coming to life as other employees arrived, unaware of the profound exchange taking place behind the glass walls. "May I share something with you?" Catherine asked after a moment. Mark nodded, somewhat relieved to shift the focus away from his own story. "My sister died when her son was 4, Catherine said. "My nephew is 12 now. My brother-in-law felt exactly as you do, that dating would somehow dishonor her memory or take something away from their son. He dedicated every minute to being both mother and father." Mark listened intently, recognizing his own experience in her words. 2 years ago, he met someone, another single parent who understood his priorities and boundaries. They took things incredibly slowly. For 6 months, they just talked on the phone after his son was asleep. It took another 3 months before they introduced their children. Catherine smiled gently. "Last spring, they married. My nephew was his father's best man. And the transition was smooth?" Mark couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "Not always," Catherine admitted. "There were adjustment periods, moments of confusion and even resentment. But what my brother-in-law discovered was that bringing more love into their home didn't diminish what came before. It honored it. His new wife doesn't try to replace my sister, no one could. Instead, she helps keep her memory alive for my nephew, asking questions about her, celebrating her birthday, creating space for those conversations." Mark stared at his hands, processing her words. "The most unexpected part," Catherine continued softly, "was what my brother-in-law told me at the wedding. He said that for years, he thought being strong meant carrying everything alone, that asking for help somehow meant failing the promise he made to my sister. He finally realized that true strength is being vulnerable enough to let others in, to build a community of love around his son rather than trying to be everything himself." A long silence filled the room as Mark absorbed her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't even know where I would begin." "You already have," Catherine said gently. "By speaking your truth today. That's often the hardest step." She hesitated. "Mark, I'm not suggesting you need to start dating tomorrow, or next month, or even next year. Only you know when or if that's right for you and your children. But I do want you to consider something." "What's that?" he asked. "The flexible work options I mentioned earlier, they're real, and they're available to you regardless of your personal choices. Working from home 2 days a week, adjusting your hours, taking personal time when you need it without explanation, these aren't favors. They're investments in our most valuable team members." Mark looked at her with surprise. "I've always assumed that maintaining strict boundaries between work and home was the professional approach." Catherine smiled. "The modern workplace is evolving, Mark. The most professional approach is the one that allows talented people to do their best work while living full lives. Your dedication to your children isn't separate from what makes you exceptional at your job, it's integral to it." For the first time in years, Mark felt something shift inside him, a loosening of the rigid structure he'd built to survive. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now," Catherine assured him. "Just think about it. And know that whatever you decide, your position here is secure and valued." As they concluded the meeting and Mark prepared to leave, Catherine added one final thought. "For what it's worth, Mark, I think Sarah would be incredibly proud of the father you've become. But I also believe she would want you to find moments of joy for yourself, not just for Emma and Liam." Mark stood in the doorway, his professional armor temporarily set aside. "How can you be so sure?" Catherine's answer was simple, "Because she loved you. And when we truly love someone, we want them to live fully, not just survive." Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Mark sat on his back porch with a cup of tea, something he hadn't done in months. The night air was cool against his face as he looked up at the stars. Somewhere in the vastness above, Emma believed her mother was watching over them. Mark had always supported this belief without fully sharing it himself. But tonight, he found himself speaking quietly to the night sky. "I'm doing my best, Sarah," he whispered. "Some days are harder than others. The kids are amazing, you would be so proud of them." He paused, gathering courage for words he hadn't allowed himself to consider. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm trying to be open to possibilities. I think maybe that's what you would want." The stars continued their silent vigil, offering no answers but somehow providing comfort nonetheless. Mark didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in 3 years, he allowed himself to imagine a future with more than just survival, one with friendship, community, and perhaps someday, new love that would expand rather than replace what came before. The following Monday, Mark did something unprecedented. He sent an email requesting to work from home on Wednesdays, allowing him to attend Liam's midweek soccer practices. He also signed up for the company's parenting support group, something he'd previously avoided. These were small steps, but significant ones. 6 months later, at Emma's school science fair, Mark found himself explaining her project to another parent, a woman whose daughter had collaborated with Emma. Their conversation extended beyond the children's experiment, flowing easily from topic to topic until the school lights flickered, signaling the event's end. They exchanged numbers, ostensibly to coordinate a playdate for the girls. That night, after tucking the children into bed, Mark noticed Emma's science fair ribbon pinned proudly to her bulletin board, alongside a photograph of Sarah holding baby Emma in the hospital. The past and present existed side by side, neither diminishing the other. Mark took a deep breath and sent a text message, not to arrange a children's playdate, but to suggest coffee for the parents. It wasn't a date, not exactly. But it was an opening, a willingness to let someone new into the carefully protected world he'd built. Whether this particular connection developed further or not was less important than the fact that Mark had finally understood, honoring Sarah's memory meant living fully, not just existing. It meant showing Emma and Liam that hearts can expand to hold both grief and joy, past and future, memory and hope. And somewhere, he liked to believe, Sarah was smiling. The story of Mark's journey reminds us that healing follows no timeline, that parenting requires immeasurable courage, and that opening our hearts again after loss might be the bravest act of all. If this story touched you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear its message. Every like and subscription helps us continue bringing stories of real courage and resilience to this community. Remember, sometimes the most profound strength isn't found in standing alone, but in being vulnerable enough to let others walk beside you.